Hello, everyone, and welcome to Conversations in Horror, the podcast. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I am your host, Kevin L. Powers. I'm also the owner, operator of Something Wicked Film Festival and Events. And welcome to our podcast in which we delve into the many different facets of the horror genre, whether they're from the films from the 20s, the 30s, the 50s, and on, or if they're subgenres such as aquatic horror, Stephen King horror, or just plain thriller horror. We got to take a little bit of everything, mishmash it, and talk about it. But we only do one film per episode. So if you're wanting to hear an episode about a bunch of different horror films, this ain't it. In this show, we take and delve deep into a single horror film so that you kind of get a good idea of whether or not this film is worth your time or not, and what we think of it. Now, every episode has a different guest host because I like to talk about horror to anyone and everyone who is out there who wants to talk with me about horror. And for this special episode, which is not so special, but special to me, is Sarah Panazzo. So thank you, Sarah, for joining us on this episode.
Bonjour.
That is great because that kind of goes in with the theme of our film. We have not tackled a whole bunch of international and foreign films, but we are going to be tackling one today, and it is Alexandre Aja's High Tension. I was going to say it in French, but then I started saying
Old
it.
Tension.
There you go.
There you go.
Which is
AKA Switchblade Romance.
Switchblade Romance, which is the film that got him noticed here in the States. Now, just to preface this, I actually saw this originally in the theater before all the hoopla happened, and it was a dubbed version, but I don't remember how much of it was dubbed and how much it was still in French, because when I rewatched the dubbed version on DVD, it was a few lines in English and most of it was still in French that wasn't subtitled. So I don't know which version you saw, Panazzo, but that's the version I saw. And it's been a while since I had seen it, even though when it originally came out, I'd probably seen it 4 or 5 times. But I do want to get your reaction to this film because this film was a very diverse film when it came out. And I will tell everyone my original reaction after you tell me yours.
Yeah, so I definitely did not see this when it originally came out in theaters because I was probably like 10 years old.
Oh, God.
Uh, but no, definitely when I started getting into some of the more, every horror fan has their going through the motions of trying to figure things out and gotta prove how tough you are. So I had my whole like, let's watch this and Hostel and Cannibal Holocaust and just the worst of the worst. And I think it was at the point where we did not have this on DVD anywhere near us. None of my friends had it, so we had to find it on the internet.
Mm.
And so I think I did see the original version in French, with subtitles, because I do remember being like, holy shit, this is gruesome. This is disgusting. It's freaking awesome. I remember loving every aspect of the movie, probably up until the end.
Which is what a lot of people actually say and why it's such a diverse film.
Yes. Uh, so yeah, how about you, Kevin?
Okay, so I had read about the film and heard about the film prior to seeing the film, and I was in my post college. I'm post college days where I was like, oh man, I went to college to analyze and critique horror movies. I gotta watch this movie because horror was one of the genres I focused on. That and animation and noir films, and so I watched a lot of foreign films and film class. Now, I knew about this one because we were going through this whole French new wave of extreme horror, and of course, I'm going to go see this at the movies. It was a art house theater I saw this in. I think, if I'm not mistaken, it was Midtown Art Cinema in downtown Atlanta. Where I saw this, and I saw a lot of movies, and I was like, "Oh my god, I gotta see this movie! Gotta see this!" I didn't know who Alexandre Aja was. I hadn't seen his previous movies or shorts before this, but I had heard so much about it. Thankfully, no one told me about the ending. I heard so much about it that I was so pumped to see this movie. Now, when I saw the movie, I was like, holy shit, what the hell am I watching? This movie was amazing. And then the ending happened, and I was so pissed off. I was really pissed off. I was like, this is a piece of shit movie. I can't believe it ended this way. And I felt that way for several years. Now, despite the ending, I still felt that way like 3 or 4 times after I watched the movie again. So despite the ending, I still went out, bought the movie, and watched it more times because it was so good. And it affected me so much. I was like, dude, this is awesome. And then I had to watch the ending. I hated the ending. Hated the ending for a very long time. I kind of saw the ending of this uh, like like I went to skip it like I do for 2001 A Space Odyssey. I skip the beginning of that movie every time I watch it with the freaking apes. I know what it means. I don't need to watch it ever again. I skip that part. Sorry.
Because it's a great movie, and then you get to the ending and you're like, okay. Yeah, like it can be a completely separate movie.
So with this, I had to read. I had to let a few years go by. I had to read about it. I had to watch more of Alexander Aja's movies. I had to kind of get under what his intentions was. And when I rewatched it, probably a good decade after it originally came out, I finally fell in love with the movie. Now, rewatching it for the podcast, I still love this movie and I can appreciate the way it ended. Now, I don't think we're going to be able to get through this podcast if you've never seen this movie without revealing the ending, because it is such a diverse ending that the whole point of our conversation
Is because of the ending. It makes and breaks the whole movie. Be
see,
yeah, every single time. Like you cannot talk about this movie without knowing the ending because otherwise you have nothing to talk about. Because it's a very gruesome movie. Two girls on like spring break or something. They go to visit the one girl's family, and this crazy truck driver who likes to fuck
you can say
heads.
it.
Like just the head. There's no body attached to it, and then he just like throws it out the window. But yeah, he's like obsessed with the friend. So you've got the main character, what's her name? Marie. Yeah, Marie, and
Yeah,
then
Alex and
Alex
Marie.
and Alex's family. So Marie goes to visit Alex's family. This truck driver is like obsessed with Alex, murders her whole family as Marie hides. And Marie's like the only one witnessing this. Guy like ties up and abducts Alex, and Marie goes on this crazy chase to like go and free her and hunt her down. And in the meantime, there's like gas station attendant who knows the truck driver who's getting murdered, and all these other people. And then there's like the big show off between the killer and Marie. And you're like, okay, cool. Saves the day. Cuts to the ending.
Now she has Panazzo has just kind of given you the basic plot of the entire movie without telling the ending, but I'm going to give you the ending because without knowing the ending, we can't really discuss the movie. And this reminds me a lot of the movie Fight Club, where
Yes.
the ending kind of turns the whole movie around. I think it's more effective in Fight Club, but with this one, it's different because when Marie goes back after she thinks she's killed the killer to save her friend Alex, who's been tied up. We realize as an audience member that Alex is afraid of Marie because Marie is the one who has been doing all this to her and not a truck driver. And the truck driver is a figment of Marie's imagination. So the entire film that we've been watching from her perspective is a lie.
Yeah. The entire movie is unreliable narration.
Unreliable narration, which is not what you're expecting with a film like this at all. It's not done very often for horror movies. Fight Club and Memento are two of the key
Yes.
example of films where the main character is not a reliable witness. But this one turns everything on its head. Like literally, it is the one thing that everyone talks about that they either hate or they love. But when I rewatched it, all of that set up in the movie. But when you're watching it, you kind of think it's a straightforward movie and you don't pick up on a lot of the things that are in the movie. And that's one of the things that after a good decade of of waiting and reading about it, I can actually now appreciate the whole movie because when I originally watched this, I was not thinking that way. I was not thinking that holy shit, it's going to be an unreliable witness. What the fuck did I just watch? It was more.
Yeah.
I was like, what the hell has happened? but now I can. I can. I think the performance. I don't know the actors' names, but I'm just gonna call them by their regular names.
Yeah.
Marie is like amazing.
Oh yeah, she's fan. Everything about this movie is great, but like you said, that twist ending of unreliable narration is where you get into a lot of questions, but we'll get into that in a bit. But no, Marie is great. Alex is terrified the entire movie. Gore, effects, wonderful.
Yeah, but it's also very suspenseful. It's called high tension for a reason, and Marie, as a person who's chasing after this killer, is on high tension the entire movie. Like you're as an audience member, you feel for her the entire movie because she's on the edge and you're on the edge with her. And at first, she's someone who what we see is someone who is apprehensive to any type of scare tactics. She gets scared easily. In fact, Alex scares her when they get out of the car in the cornfield, and she drives off for a few moments, scaring the hell out of Marie. So you don't think that she's going to be a strong character, but as the film progresses, she's forced to make decisions that makes her a stronger character. The gas station scene is one great example of that,
Hmm.
where she goes in just to hide at first because she's afraid that the entire time the truck driver is going to come after her or see her, despite the fact the truck driver never even knows she exists. But it still terrifies her the entire time. Things like that are what keep you on the edge the entire film and what makes the film effective as a horror film. That's why.
Yeah, I'd like to I have a comment here from somebody semi unrelated to the production of this that puts it perfectly. The intention of subverting the common idea that thrillers must have periods of slow pacing between moments of excitement, instead opting to keep the tension high
Mm-hmm.
throughout and moving from conflict to conflict without periods of release tension.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yes, and like I don't think I realized that really until I rewatched it recently because it's like I said called high tension for a reason. You are at that height of tension from the moment the truck driver's having fucking the head to everything else because that first scene with him just throws you off. That is not what you're expecting from a killer when
Yeah.
you first see him in a movie. You know,
Well, and like it starts off like you can't even tell. Like you're like, okay, some dude's getting some like fun time in a van, and then he literally just tosses the head out like a piece of trash, and you're like, oh, it's one of those movies. Okay.
yes, it goes really fast from being okay. These two girls who are on vacation going to see a parent, one of them's parents' house, to go where they're supposed to be studying, mind you. They actually mentioned they're supposed to be studying on their vacation or what have you. To being this home invasion, but only the home part lasts very little because of the
Yes.
chase.
It ends up going like from the home to inside cars, gas stations, in like the woods and fields, and there's like if I remember correctly, there's like a greenhouse thing
Mm-hmm.
where they're in, and it's just like, where do these people live? But no, like you were saying, there's a lot of like little hints here and there. Like Maria's obviously interested in Alex,
Mm-hmm.
asks about boys she's into, and then she literally like semi-masturbates while sitting on a swing set watching her shower through a window. And it's like, oh, okay, I guess. Cool. It's one
uh,
way to meet your friend's family. And then, yeah, you
this
really get to know about their insides.
Well, I don't know if this is Aja's way of just trying to show normal people or trying to make sex and violence a very subversive in a movie that has a lot of it and sex is not actually good in this movie because it's all
Yes.
or healthy, not good, not healthy.
Yeah, no. This is part of that the new extremity movement,
Mm-hmm.
French films at the turn of the 21st century where they're categorized by graphic violence, especially sexual and explicit sexual imagery. It refer extreme refers to the kinds of acts depicted and the manner in which they are. So yeah, it's not a lot of torture, but there's a lot of like close up and really long violent scenes.
Yeah. Oh, and they're not yet. There is no torture. Well, I think about the only person who gets actually maybe tortured is the father whose head gets smashed into the staircase, and
But
he's
see, I wouldn't even say that's torture because that's like quick and over and done with. Where like Hostel would be torture because you're sitting there and just dealing with it. If anybody's tortured, it's poor Alex being dealing with this whole movie the entire time.
oh my god, you might be right about that. I kind of saw that like that because that seemed a little bit extreme to push his head through a freaking.
Oh yeah, no, it's extreme, but it is not torture at that point because it is over and done with. But yeah, it is quite grotesque, some of the kills in this movie. Just yeah.
Well, the only one I think is not grotesque is when the truck driver kills the kid because we only hear the gunshot and it's in the cornfield. So
Yeah. Whereas everybody else is like, um, there's what is it? I forgot how she kills the store clerk. Oh, it's with an axe. Yeah, she just
where
like
he gets the axe, I have no idea. He just comes up with the axe.
yeah, and then like just everything else, slashes the dad's face with a straight razor, head pressed between two spindles of the staircase, and then shoves a bookcase that decapitates him. It's just it's a lot. It really is extreme. So if you are looking for like guts, gore, just eh, this is your movie.
Yeah, and and the reason why it's so effective is the practical effects are so damn good.
They are. They're really good. It was ended up being limited in a bunch of different countries just because of how bad it was. There's one of the stories is like one of the blood spatters that hits the camera wasn't intentional. And later on in another scene, they adjust the camera and blood like oozed out of the camera from earlier where it had hidden. So it ends up being a lot of blood.
Oh my god,
Plus the fact that Marie and what's her name?
Alex,
Alex are like footless or shoeless
you
most
look.
of the movie. And so you've got like Marie running through the woods just bare feet and it's like that poor girl.
Yeah, but the thing is, when even when she has her comeuppance on the actual killer, the truck driver, before the reveal that they're one and the same characters, that's violent as well. Because from
Yeah.
and that's where you realize what a turn the character has come from the very meek character from the very beginning to the very end of the story, where she brutally kills the truck driver.
Truck driver with like the concrete saw and it's so grotesque. It's and like I said, it is such a good movie up to this point that if you don't know the twist, you are not expecting it at all.
Nope.
And then when it happens, it like my problem still to this day is going back and watching it and being like, so how much of this actually happened? Because obviously she was not like ringing the doorbell in the middle of the night, otherwise people would have heard or something. But like there are bits and pieces that still don't track, and I don't know how much of it is unreliable narration and how much of it happened or did not happen, I guess, because I don't know what happened in her mind anymore. Because there
Uh,
is so much to this movie.
so that is a trick of the movie. Every time I rewatch it, I kind of try and delve deeper in it, and then you can't really rely on the movie itself, which is
Yeah.
odd for most movies. Number one is because it starts off with Marie, and you don't realize it's Marie just yet. She's in the room that you see her in at the very end, and all she does is repeat, I won't let anyone come between us anymore." She repeats it several times before cutting to so the so-called present day. And
Hmm.
you realize at the very end, at some point, it seems to be a story she tells someone, but in reality, it's never a story she tells anyone. So the scene with the truck driver just having his way with the head would make no sense
Yeah.
in any way because it's a scene that doesn't involve her or her with another person. The only way that that would make sense if it's all in her head. So
Yeah,
none
because
of it's
it's
reliable.
yeah, because it's at that same point then like we know Alex is in the truck at some point. So where does the truck even come from?
Mm.
Because she's driving with Alex to her parents' house.
Uh-huh.
Where is this truck? Is any of this like real, or did she get obsessed with Alex, go to her home, imagine the entire car ride to her house and was not invited, and literally knows where she is and knows the gas station clerk because she's been stalking her so much?
Yeah, it's
Are they even friends? Who knows?
that's the thing about the film. What you read about it, what you read about it, and you kind of watch it several times. This is not like a film that decides to make all the pieces fit. Like The
No.
Usual Suspects, when you get that big reveal at the end and you realize that Kaiser Sose is really Kevin, what's his name? Oh my, Kevin Spacey's character, who's
Yeah.
just been telling a story to the cops. You realize it's unreliable. You
Hmm.
can see all the pieces come in line.
Yeah. And like with Fight Club where you get those little rewards of like, okay, they zoom in on the phone and there's no reflection of Brad Pitt. It's just what's his name?
Edward Norton.
Edward Norton. And like this, it doesn't match because you're going to see the
Uh-huh.
killer's hands, the male truck driver's hands while you're watching the movie. You are going to see his face. And then all of a sudden they do that swap and it's tricky.
It is, and
It's very tricky.
you just have to go in and realize that everything that you're watching is just a figment of her imagination of what she believes, and therefore it's unreliable completely. I kind of like the idea that you said, where she's essentially stalking Alex the whole
Hmm.
time, and that they're not really friends. She's obsessed, and it
Yeah.
might be like, oh, they might be in the same class together or stuff like that. But really, it's just Alex who's going to go see her parents, and Maria realizes this, follows her, kills everyone in the family to get to her, and that's kind of like that would be the easiest way to make the whole movie make sense. But that's not what you're presented with.
Yeah.
They don't go back and try and the thing what gets people is they don't go back to try and make what you've seen before fit into the current explanation. And I think
Yeah.
that's what gets a lot of people. Like to get the like Usual Suspects, all these what was the other one I mentioned? Fight Club.
Fight Club.
They all or Memento. They all you realize all you they actually go back and they try and to make everything make sense for the audience. This one does not do that.
No.
It makes everything not make any sense other than it's all in their head. You can't rely on anything, and that may piss off a lot of people. And it did piss off a lot of people. I'm not gonna say it didn't. It did.
Oh,
Pissed me
and
off.
it pissed off even more importantly, I don't know if you know anything about not really a lawsuit, but an almost lawsuit with Dean Koontz regarding this movie.
No, I have no idea about Dean Koontz. No, no.
So this movie was made in 2003. Uh, Screenplay was originally very similar to this, but the entire movie was from Marie's point of view. You don't find out that she's the killer until the absolute end of the movie when they roll in like the videotape showing her killing people, right?
Uh-huh.
So earlier, when I was saying that quote, intention of subverting common idea that thrillers must have periods of slow pacing between moments of excitement, et cetera, um, is line for line what Dean Koontz wrote about his novel, Intensity,
Yeah.
which essentially this entire movie is this and then the twist ending that she's the killer. It's about two girls who end up getting tormented by this truck driver killing. It's literally line for line most of the movie. Except the Alex character dies and the Marie character survives and ends up finding another girl in the truck driver's basement. Um, Originally, the director here decided or said that he had never read the book and then finally released, oh no, I took a ton of influence from this. And Dean Koontz decided to not sue for plagiarism because he found the film so puerile, so disgusting, and so intellectually bankrupt that he didn't want to be associated with it. And to this day, that is on his website.
Wow. So I have to say, I've never read the book, but I did see the movie Intensity that was based on the book because I was what there were at for a time in the '90s. A lot of Dean Koontz's books were
Yes.
adapted to movies. I probably saw every one of them, despite the fact I've only ever read one of his books. And it didn't dawn on me that that could be a possibility with this. It's a TV movie, so the ideal is that for me, TV movies are kind of like back then were like the lower tier for horror fans. We don't really remember many of them other than Salem's Lot and It.
Yeah.
There's not many great,
Anymore either, too.
it's not a thing anymore,
Yeah.
unfortunately. It's streaming services. So the TV horror movie has kind of almost died, to be honest with you. I mean, it's not a thing really. But that's interesting you say that because I've never known that. And I know I've seen the Intensity Dean Koontz movie, and I probably, if there's a possibility of trying to rewatch that, I might have to rewatch it.
Yes.
Unfortunately, TV
It,
movies are not always given releases on DVD or Blu-ray, which is unfortunate.
yeah. But yeah, so I thought that was hysterical that
Yeah.
it was almost because I was like, no way. And I had to double check because I didn't know about that the first couple times I watched it. And then I
Wow.
read it this time and I was like, oh, oh yeah, it's almost the exact same movie. And then they've got the twist.
Now, did you read the Dean Koontz book at
I
all?
haven't. I've read, I was really into Odd Thomas and some of his more horror stuff, like his Frankenstein stuff.
Oh yeah.
But I did not read this one, and I don't even think I think I recognized the title, but I don't think I ever knew anything about it. And as soon as I saw his comment about what he wanted this book to be, I was like, oh no, this is 100% high tension. It's intensity, high tension. They're so similar. It's literally the same thing.
I yeah, that's actually quite funny. I'm gonna have to check that one out. I do have to admit though that some of the TV movies based on this work I do have on VHS because it's the only way I can find them. I think Whispers and what was it Service of Twilight I have on
Hmm.
VHS. Watchers and Watchers too I have on VHS. TV movies I watched a lot of them back then, but they don't stick with you unfortunately.
I mean, some of them do, but yeah, like we said, that isn't really big anymore because we've got all these different streaming services, so they release their own movies straight to streaming.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I mean, this it's a hell of a thing to try and rip off,
Yeah.
especially for your first movie.
So to be honest with you, Alexander Aja, who went off to do a lot of movies after this, loves to play with
Yes.
tension in his films. This one's probably still one of the best ones that rack up that tension a lot.
100%.
I would say that the script that him and Lavassieur, is that how you pronounce his French name? The writer who
I
he's partner with,
think
uh,
so.
they wrote the script and worked on P2, which also does that, where it keeps the tension high because it's essentially a two-person film as well.
Yeah, I mean that whole little group because it's the two of them and then
Yeah, but see, isn't there another?
uh Frank Calhoun, who plays Jimmy, he's the director and writer of P2 as well. And all three of these guys kind of bounce between each other, producing, writing, directing, because
Yes,
they also did like Mirrors, Maniac. They just recently did like Crawl and Never Let Go,
I think the
which I
pyramid
haven't
together.
seen Never Let Go yet, but like Crawl too
Yeah,
is also,
tension with like two characters and a crocodile.
yeah, exactly. So he keeps it really well done. I really liked his adaptation of Horns. I thought it was
Mhm,
really well done. That one not as much tension. It's a lot of suspense,
mhm.
but it's not as high of stakes, I want to say, as it is in like this. Um, but no, I'm always interested in his work. He consistently puts out good movies. Like, I wouldn't say there's like a bad movie because even this is like I said, you might be up in the air over the twist ending, but it is a really well done, gruesome movie.
Mhm.
Um, it's definitely worth watching if you are into the extreme movies. I do not recommend it for the squeamish.
Well, it reminds me of what I tell people when they watch Piranha 3D. I was like, Piranha 3D has some great gore effects. It keeps you on the edge, and everybody dies pretty much. And
Yeah.
it's a fun movie. Uh, but that one would be the Hollywood version. From High Tension, which is this lower budget indie French film, to,
Yes.
I'm going to use that same tension and rack it up with these prehistoric 3D piranhas in Piranha 3D. Uh, Thankfully, he had nothing to do with Piranha 3D Double D. But yeah, uh, even on that lower end of a movie like Piranha 3D, the story and the tension is racked up to keep you on the edge of your seat. And I think he does that extremely well for any of his films. I think Horns,
Yes.
like you said, Horns may be the one of his films that he doesn't really play with as much.
Well, and because the source material is not a very high tension, high stakes, there's suspense because it's semi-murder mystery
Mm-hmm.
and everybody hates the main character. Wonderfully done. Love the book, love the original author. So I thought that was pretty well done, especially with the cast. Because I think that was also like Dan Radcliffe's first big thing outside of Harry Potter. Um, but yeah, everything else is like has you on the edge of your seat the entire time.
Yeah,
Whereas that one is, like I said, much more of a slow burn of, okay, who did it?
yeah.
What is going to happen here? Um, but yeah, I mean, a lot of his movies are also like life or death stakes.
Yeah, and he's
For,
done a lot of remakes. Surprisingly, for someone he's done very effective remakes, such as The
yeah,
Hills Have Eyes and even Mirrors, which is a remake of
yes.
Into the Mirror. His version is actually much more suspenseful than the original Into the Mirror, um, which I can appreciate because I loved his version of Mirrors. Uh,
Hmm.
I'm trying to think of the other remake other than Maniac, which he produced. I can't remember if he wrote or helped write
Yeah,
Maniac.
he did the screenplay for
Okay.
Maniac, screenplay for P2.
Mm-hmm.
Um, he also did Furia.
Oh yeah, that's his other film.
Yeah, and then he's produced a bunch of stuff, like I
Yeah,
said, with those two other guys. They've been all
that's
bouncing
exactly
around
right.
between each other's.
No, that's a good aesthetic. I don't think they've done anything other than a horror film.
No, it's all horror between the three of them. 'Cause yeah, they're literally just all together doing. Oh, oh, the only one he associate produced was Rock the Casbah, and that is the only I would say non-horror movie he
Yeah, I
has
forgot
done.
about that one. Oh shit. Yeah, well, I wish he had added some of those great moments to the pyramid, but we have the found footage movie, The Pyramid, which has questionable CGI, which is the only movie he's associated with that has questionable CGI. Because even the CGI in Piranha 3D was actually really good.
Which, you know what, you can't always afford the best CGI people, but apparently his practical effects are really good. So,
And this one is all practical, and
yeah.
it's amazing to watch. I do think gore fans, and there are people out there who love their gore. Now,
Hmm.
there are people who love their gore who don't need a good story, and that's why we have so many 80s movies that are fondly remembered. They're not really remembered for being good movies, but they have great gore. But of the films being that were made post 2000, French horror, this is still one of the best ones. I've seen a lot of French horrors films during that French extremity, and most of those were not even released in France. Surprisingly, they were all generally made for export.
Yeah.
But this one still holds up extremely well. I just like to say that that's not always the case with gore films. Like I said, the '80s. There's a lot of the '80s movies that just don't hold up at
Yeah.
all. Um, yeah, they've lost that thing that spark that if you grew up with them in the '80s, loving them, by the time you hit the 2020s as we are in, now, it's kind of like eh.
Well,
But
and it's also one of those things like film as a whole has gotten a lot more violent because I remember being like shocked at
yeah,
certain movies and now Terrifier is like everywhere and everybody wants to see it. And it's like that would not have made it anywhere near to that would have been one of those hidden tapes that only certain people had back in like the 90s.
You know what? That's
Um,
a good point to say, especially for this day and age with how successful Terrifier 3 was at the box office.
yeah.
You
Because,
know,
like I said, there's like movies that come out now that I'm like, oh, this is much more violent than these movies that were getting blacklisted for being extremely violent in the 90s. And
mm,
like this is considered extreme. So, like,
yeah,
Time Magazine actually in 2010 did the 10 most ridiculously violent films up to that point. So, we had Passion of the Christ,
yes, that always makes it.
300, Cannibal Holocaust, Kill Bill, Wild Bunch, I Spit on Your Grave, Hostel, Battle Royale, Clockwork Orange, and High Tension. And looking at some of those now, most of those are considered very tame compared to modern day movies. Like going back and watching Hostel, I was like, this is it. This is what we were
Remember? Yeah.
freaking out about.
Or a
But
Clockwork Orange. I'm like, wow. I was like, yeah, it was violent, but I don't. It,
yeah.
so, uh, but it's always interesting to talk about violence in horror movies and violence in cinema because of the fact that we don't talk about it enough. And for the longest time, especially in the early 2000s, aughts, whatever you want to call them, up to
Mhm.
the 2010s, we were getting a lot of sanitized movies. And a lot of the unsanitized movies were mostly coming from outside of the United States, foreign films like these, the Japanese extreme horror films, and all
Mhm.
that type of stuff. We kind of watered down, or I say Hollywood especially watered down their films to appease to the younger crowds and have all the hottest actors in them. So we got a lot of PG-13 movies or
Mhm.
remakes of foreign films, which were then watered down. And thankfully, no one's bothered to remake this movie.
Yeah, I don't think you could really remake it at this point unless you really are just doing a cash grab. There's nothing newer you could do.
I think if this was to be remade by a U.S. studio, they would try to make the whole film make sense.
Yeah, which would not necessarily make a good movie.
I could. I want to say that there are several great movies of remakes that were not great, such as like the Martyrs remake or the shit. What was the other one I was just thinking of? Crap. There's so many of them now because everything's been remade, and it's sad that when these movies like this get when movies with this much gore get remade that they get watered down and sanitized. I suggest everyone go out there and just watch this one, and if you really need to watch an American version, watch the dubbed version, even though most of the dialogue was not dubbed in
Yeah.
English. All right, so I want to know exactly, is there anything else we need to talk about this film? Because I delved deep into the twist, we've delved deep into the gore, we've delved deep into other films by Alexander Aja.
Yeah, I mean, for this movie, I think we've talked a lot about it. We could definitely get more into extreme films if that's what people like, because there's tons of new ones that are even worse that you might not even like think of.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, I mean, this movie isn't trying to tell a lot. It's not trying to prove a point. It's not trying to delve deep into the inner psyche and inner workings of politics or anything like that. So it is a very entertaining film. If you love gore and guts, it is 100% great for that.
Mm-hmm.
Just don't expect, like I said, it's a popcorn flick, basically a very bloody popcorn flick.
I'm trying. It reminds me of Frontiers, or I'm thinking of the freaking zombie movie. Oh, I wish I could remember the zombie. No, La Horde. La Horde. That is like, this movie doesn't make a whole hell of a lot of sense, but god damn it, if the gore and the zombies are
Yeah.
amazing.
It is worth it just for the gore alone, and then you can decide if you like it or don't like it. Because, like I said, it's a really good movie, and then that ending kind of makes or breaks it for whoever watches it.
Yeah, yeah. I will say if you have not revisited this film, you should because the ending may be diversive, but once you kind of get the idea of what the film is trying to do, the ending doesn't become as problematic as you may have thought it was. That's one of the last things I like to say. And that, like I said, it took me a good decade to really get past it, despite the fact I'd seen it probably 4 or 5 times, if not more, before that decade hit. I've seen it. I think the last time I saw it before this podcast is probably 3 or 4 years ago. No, probably it was before COVID. COVID throws our
Oh
timeline,
yeah.
so it's probably been now about 6 years. But I'm glad I revisited it because I still enjoy the hell out of this movie. This movie for me did not age horribly. It's really
Mm-mm.
effective, and that's one of the things that doesn't happen a lot for horror movies. They kind of do after a while lose their luster, but because this film is so unhinged is a good word for this.
Yes, 100%.
Uh, I kind of like that. I kind of really like that. And I'll continue to watch it. And I'll continue to tell people about it. It has its faults, obviously, but I think the faults are what adds to the mystique of it. So,
Yeah,
any
plus I mean, great director. He's
more?
still making great movies. Very entertaining, very suspenseful. So yeah, I'd say it's still worth rewatching or watching for the first time, even if you know the twist.
Yeah, I like to. You know, I like to really hear what someone with in today's audiences watches this film for the first time and see what their reaction is to it. That would be very interesting to hear.
Well, and it's hard to, in this day and age, to not know what the movie's about because it's like going and watching From Dusk Till Dawn for the first time now. Like, it's such a popular thing online that, like, you have to know what the twist is.
Oh Jesus! Or Fight Club. I don't. I think people who have never seen Fight Club still know what the twist is.
Yeah, it's like the end of Seven. What's in the box?
Oh
We all
yeah.
know what it is, whether you've seen the movie or not. So yeah, it's you're unless somebody's like completely blind to the internet or you're showing your 5-year-old who doesn't know anything about any of this, right?
All right. With that, everyone out there, we like to rate the movies nowadays in regards to how well we think the movie is. Now, we go from a scale of 1 to 5, one being horrible, five being amazing, Oscar worthy, everything. Where, Panazzo, do you place High Tension?
I would put it at a solid 3 right in between. Because, like I said, gore makes this movie. And then the ending is kind of leaves a little to be desired for me, just because it's like, okay, how much I like knowing things. I don't want to know that like half of this movie is possibly just taking place in their head and doesn't really happen. And then I'm like, okay, so what parts of this movie are actually real? But that also adds to the concept of the movie. Um, so yeah, I'd say a solid 3. It's good, but it's not one of my favorites.
All right, so I'm gonna give it the actual 4. Of all of Alexander Aja's films, I've seen this one the most. But it's probably this and Hills Have Eyes have been the ones I keep going back to because as much as I love Wes Craven's The Hills Have Eyes, I think Alexander Aja improved upon that whole thing. I think his is a better version. I think High Tension is another one of those films where if I want to watch a good, suspenseful, gory film that doesn't let up from beginning to end and doesn't have that comedy release that has become like the mainstay of horror films in America, I'm going to watch this film. I think
Hmm.
that's the biggest problem with me in American horror films is that every one of these modern day horror filmmakers tends to think that they have to have these moments of release, and
Yes.
I believe the opposite. I don't want to have a fucking release. I want to be 90 minutes, start to finish. My tension is at the peak and it never lets off to the end and still has something to say at the very end. When we realize as an audience member that Marie is who's really the truck driver, who's really the killer, and we are seeing her flip the flip flop between the truck driver and her, that I'm still my tension rate is still up.
Yeah, I'm with you. I am sick of jump scares. I'm sick of the like, okay, we've got to have comic relief here, here, here.
Yeah.
I love the buildup of tension. I always refer to it like in a Hereditary, where you have this tension building up the entire movie. You know what's going to happen, and then they do like the crazy jump scare-esque thing where the the scene immediately flips from looking at the house at night to looking at it at day, and half of the audience loses their shit because of it's a jump scare, but it's because it's so tense, any small thing will
Yes.
set you off. So
Yes.
I love that part of this movie is exactly how tense it is because it does not let up.
Yeah, and so that right there is why I give it a 4. I hope that I really do hope that people who have seen this movie and were against it, like I was originally, because of the ending, will take their time to rewatch it. My whole point of this podcast is hopefully to get people to rewatch movies that they thought were bad or were not really taken with originally, to give them a cleaner or a different outlook on some of these films. And this is one of those films where I believe that is a big problem with a lot of people who have only ever seen it once, is they didn't like it because of the ending and they've never given it another chance. I unfortunately I've heard and listened about that a lot for
Oh,
the
we've had
movie.
a few movies ourselves too, like
Yeah.
House of Wax.
House of Wax, another movie I thought was, I was like, dude, I had a greater appreciation of it when I rewatched it, and I hadn't seen it since it originally came out. I love that. I love that. That's what we do here, and that we have these types of conversations, because I would never have bothered to watch House of Wax had we not decided to discuss it. And that's not only the me and Thomas Tillerello, one of our other special guests, talked about House of a Thousand Corpses, which I absolutely hated when that movie came out. Absolutely hated that fucking movie. But when I rewatched it years later, I was like, oh shit, it really isn't as bad as I remembered it. And I hope everyone who's listening to our podcast gets that out of what we talk about when we talk about these movies. And there's gonna be some movies we're gonna hate, that we
Yeah.
loved as kids, that we hated. If you listen to my podcast on John Carpenter's Ghost of Mars, most of us didn't like it when we watched it. It was like, wow, this dated horribly. Like,
I mean, even Repo the Genetic Opera. I mean, I that movie was great when I was growing up, but yeah, when we were talking about it, I remember just ripping on it so much.
so that's that's what we want to do here in the podcast, and I hope that you've enjoyed this one. And if you've never seen the film, you go out and search it. It's worth watching. And if you have seen it, you go back and rewatch it for another outlook, another look at the film. With that, I want to thank you, Panazzle, for joining us on this conversation. Uh,
No, thank you, Kevin.
and for everyone else out there, make sure to follow us on your favorite podcast app, Spotify and YouTube. Make sure you like, share, do that thing you do with your favorite podcast. Make sure you check out some of our previous episodes, as well as a lot of the ones that are coming up, because we have a lot of great movies that we're going to be discussing for the rest of 2025. With that, everyone here at Something Wicked Entertainment wants to thank you for joining us, and hopefully we'll see you next week on the next episode. From all of us, have a great day. Conversations in Horror is a Broken Lighthouse Pictures production, written, produced, and directed by Kevin L. Powers, executive producer Kelly A. Inoka. All contents and material from this episode of Conversations in Horror is copyright 2025 Broken Lighthouse Pictures.